Originally released back in 2001 for PC under the title Severance, Blade of Darkness. Blade of Darkness is considered by many to be a really acknowledged pioneer of the Soulslike genre, owing to its dark fantasy world, intricate gameplay mechanics, tough-as-nails combat, and having launched years earlier than Demon Souls, though I'm sure some of From Software's earlier first-person dungeon crawlers may disagree. Now, despite failing to set the world on fire on release, the game has, over the years, gained a cult following. As such, developers Rebel Act, with the help of publisher Snag, released an updated version of the game for PC. Now, that version has arrived on the Nintendo Switch, and the question is whether it's still worth playing. Blade of Darkness throws players into a dark fantasy world in which the forces of chaos have once again risen to plague the world with untold suffering. Many years ago, Iana, the mother of all living beings, gave a world to the sword to smite chaos, and now that the world is in need of a new hero to wield that same sword and hopefully destroy evil forever. Now, it's worth getting the changes out of the way first. Outside of changes to the game's code to get it to run on modern machines and consoles, it's a basic visual update, up to 4K resolution on the PC and more modest on the Switch. But the developers have kept everything else intact. So it's the same mechanics, level design, and sound design from 2001, for good and for ill. Visually, Blade of Darkness can look rather attractive for a game that's only received what amounts to a resolution and texture facelift. Sure, the environments are sparse by modern standards, but it sports that beautiful binary space partition style level design that I love. It's all angular, all the time, and will be a treat for nostalgia lovers. The updated textures, for the most part, do look great, with a surprising amount of details on walls, floors, and doors. The only time I noticed the limitations was when I popped into first-person mode to use the bow, and those textures, specifically the tattoos on the barbarian's arms, look like a pixelated mess. Outside of that, enemy and character models generally look great, with a nice amount of wear and tear on player models when you or they take damage. On to the most important question: how does it play? Well, the answer is going to be dependent on your ability to stomach old-school design, tank controls, and a serious amount of jank. You've got 4 characters to choose from: a barbarian, an amazon, a knight, and a dwarf, giving the game a very Dungeons & Dragons feel. Each character starts off in a different location, under fairly different circumstances. The knight, as an example, starts off imprisoned, a la the Elder Scrolls, and you'll have to break out of your cell and fight barehanded for a bit. The barbarian starts off in a mountain fortress area, bringing with him some heavy Conan vibes. This design alone makes it worth playing through each character's opening area, at least before they all converge on the same locations. Each character has their own starting stats and preferred weapons, with stats increasing with each level up. This brings the RPG mechanics to the table, ensuring a steady flow of new weapons that you couldn't use before, along with increasing your overall health and defense. So far, so traditional. However, the combat, of which there is plenty, is the meat of the game, and these mechanics will either make or break the experience for you. First off, tank controls are alive and well here. You may be using the analog stick to control your character, but toning and movement are built around that archaic design, which can be very annoying in the heat of action. In general exploration, you can't strafe left or right, but you can move in those directions slowly when locked onto an enemy. A quick press does 180-degree turn, but it's also rather slow. There's a clunkiness and lack of subtlety in the way you move that takes a while to get used to, but never becomes comfortable. When fighting, the direction you move the analog combined with the attack button determines which attack you do, whether it's left, right, or forward for low strikes. It's actually an intriguing system that takes a while to get used to. It's very timing-based and tactical, and a well-timed strike can lop off heads and limbs in one shot if you're careful. You can also dodge left, right, or backstep when locked onto an enemy, but it's easily the worst dodge I've used in some time. It's very slow, and at times it felt like it was conflicting with the tank control movement style. Admittedly, the combat system can be thrilling and hard, especially when you're dealing with multiple enemies at the same time, though you can cheese them somewhat by getting them to attack each other. In true Souls-like fashion, you also have to watch out for a stamina meter that governs your attacks, and weapons have durability as well. Too much parrying and your sword can break, or shields degrade with every attack until they break. Sadly, it's the bugs that really bring the combat system down more than anything else. Apart from the awkward controls, hitboxes don't always work. That meant I wasted plenty of stamina only to watch my sword slide through an enemy that did not so much as flinch. Occasionally this meant I didn't take damage, but more often than not, I'd get hit by attacks that weren't close to me either. The other annoying buggy element was the lock-on. It didn't always work, and in some situations, switched off during a fight, letting my character swing right past an enemy, only to be stabbed repeatedly in the back. If there's one area I feel Blade of Darkness truly shines, it's in the level design. There's a nice variety of locations on display, even if they are sparsely populated, and most of them will eventually loop back to earlier sections, opening up shortcuts. Exploration is encouraged and a lot of fun, as, scattered across each level, you'll discover potions and food to pick up, crates to smash and burn, locks to open, and traps to either deactivate or avoid. It's during these quiet moments of exploration that the game's sound design also stands out. Most of the time you're treated to the sound of wind whistling through the eaves and monster growls just out of view, but then the musical score kicks in at specific points and ratchets up the tension and dread tremendously. As a result, while Blade of Darkness may lack the visual oomph we've come to expect from remasters, it still boasts an incredible atmosphere and lingering sense of dread, thanks to the amazing sound design and wonderful score, coupled with the tough fights you know are just lurking around every corner. It's really quite wonderful. Wrapping up, I'd argue Blade of Darkness is an intriguing time capsule, preserving earlier video game design. In many ways, the game was certainly ahead of its time at launch, but certain aspects, specifically its movement system, haven't aged well. But despite those problems and the combat bugs, Blade of Darkness still manages to remain addictively compelling and playable. And yes, extremely fun if you are a fan of retro games. Always wanted to see what the next level would bring, or where another hero would begin their journey, and each death made me want to dive straight back in to get that little bit further. It isn't hard to see why this game has gained a cult following. With stellar sound design and fun if flawed combat, and a manual save whenever you want system, Blade of Darkness is still worth checking out, and one that I feel, especially given the popularity of the Soulslike genre, deserves a full-blown remake instead. If you've got this far, please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow.